Hi there. Thanks for watching my video all the way through. My goal is to get 1,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. Let's move on to the stories. Story 1: The Invisible Neighbor. Stephen and Emily Johnson had long dreamed of a trip to the California coast. They decided to rent a house on Airbnb to relax and enjoy the ocean views. After a long search, they found the perfect place, a beautiful house overlooking the beach in a secluded village. The host, Michael, had received many positive reviews, and the house looked stunning in the photos. Stephen and Emily booked it without hesitation for a week. On the day of their arrival, Michael greeted them with a smile, showed them around the house, and handed over the keys. He mentioned that he would be nearby if any issues arose. The house was even better than they expected: spacious rooms, modern furniture, and huge windows offering an ocean view. On their first night, Stephen and Emily decided to have a romantic dinner on the terrace. They enjoyed the fresh air and the sound of the waves. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise coming from inside the house. It sounded like someone was moving furniture. Stephen went to check but found nothing suspicious. They chalked it up to the quirks of an old house and returned to their dinner. The next day, when they returned from a walk, Emily noticed that some things in the house had been moved. For instance, her book was on a different table, and her clothes were not where she left them. Stephen also noticed that his laptop was on, even though he distinctly remembered turning it off before they left. At first, they thought it was their own absent-mindedness, but the oddities continued each day. On the third night, Emily woke up with the feeling that someone was watching her. She woke Stephen, but there was no one around. Stephen suggested they set up a hidden camera to find out what was happening. He placed it in the living room, aimed at the door, to capture any activity. The next morning, Stephen checked the camera footage. What they saw made their hearts stop. At 3 a.m., the door slowly opened and a figure entered the room. It moved silently like a shadow and headed straight for their bedroom. Then it stopped, as if sensing something, and slowly turned towards the camera. Its face was partially hidden by a hood, but they could make out a sinister smile. It stood there for a few seconds, then turned and left. Stephen and Emily immediately left the house and called the police. The officers who arrived inspected the house but found no signs of a break-in. The owner, Michael, looked shocked and claimed he had never heard of such incidents. The police suggested checking the house for hidden passages or secret rooms. It turned out there was an old system of underground tunnels beneath the house, left over from its construction days. One of them led directly to the basement of the house. In the tunnel, they found traces of recent activity: empty bottles, food scraps, and even a blanket. Further investigation revealed that the neighboring house, which appeared abandoned, was a shelter for a homeless man who had been living in the tunnels for several months. He used the tunnels to enter houses unnoticed. Stephen and Emily were horrified by the discovery. They immediately canceled their booking and returned home, feeling deceived and scared. This experience left a lasting mark of fear in their hearts, and they never used Airbnb again. This story taught them that even in the most beautiful and seemingly safe places, dark secrets could be hidden. They learned not to trust reviews and photos blindly and always to stay vigilant, especially in unfamiliar places. Story 2: A visit to the old farm. Marcus and Rachel Walker had long planned a vacation away from the hustle and bustle of the city. They chose a quiet corner in rural Tennessee, renting an old farm through Airbnb. The hosts, Tom and Lisa, seemed friendly and welcoming, and the reviews about the place were overwhelmingly positive. The photos of the old farmhouse, surrounded by dense forests and vast fields, looked idyllic. Upon arrival, Tom greeted them with a smile, showed them around the house, and shared a bit of its history. The house was built by his great-grandfather over 100 years ago and had undergone many changes over the years, but retained its original charm. Around the house was a dense silence, interrupted only by the rustling of trees and the sounds of wildlife. The Walkers were delighted and eagerly looked forward to exploring the surroundings. The first night was peaceful, with the couple enjoying the sounds of the night forest. But the next day, returning from a long walk, Marcus noticed that the basement door was ajar. He didn't remember opening it, but assumed the hosts might have checked something before their arrival. That night, Rachel woke up to strange noises coming from the basement. It sounded like someone was quietly tapping and scratching. She woke Marcus, and together they went to check. The basement was empty, only old tools and furniture lying in disarray. They decided it might be rodents and went back to bed. The next day, Tom came to check if everything was okay. Marcus mentioned the strange noises from the basement, and Tom laughed, saying old houses often make such sounds. However, his laughter seemed strained to Marcus, and he suspected Tom was hiding something. The following night, the noises returned, but this time they were louder and more distinct. It sounded like someone or something was trying to get out of the basement. Marcus, armed with a flashlight, decided to conduct a thorough inspection. When he descended into the basement, he noticed tracks on the floor that couldn't belong to any animal. They resembled human footprints, but were too large and oddly shaped. The next morning, the walkers confronted Tom again, insisting on an explanation. Tom reluctantly shared the story of his great-grandfather, who was not only a farmer but also an amateur alchemist. He reportedly conducted strange experiments in the basement, trying to find a way to prolong life. After his death, a sealed room remained in the basement, known only to family members. Rachel and Marcus felt uneasy and considered leaving early, but their curiosity got the better of them, and they decided to explore the basement once more, this time more thoroughly. They found an old wooden door hidden behind a pile of junk. The door was locked with an old rusty padlock, which they managed to open with tools found nearby. Behind the door was a small room filled with antique books, dried substances in jars, and strange apparatus. In the corner stood a large chest, locked with another padlock. Using a key they found, they opened it and discovered numerous notes and journals belonging to Tom's great-grandfather. They detailed his experiments in creating a creature that could live forever. Suddenly, they heard heavy footsteps approaching the basement. It was Tom. He stormed in with a crazed look, yelling that they had disturbed his great-grandfather's peace and that they would not leave here alive. He admitted to being the descendant of not just a farmer, but a mad scientist whose experiments had left a mark on the entire family. Marcus and Rachel tried to escape, but Tom caught them, threatening to keep them there forever as part of his family. In the struggle, Marcus managed to break free and knock Tom to the ground. They ran out of the house and called the police. The police arrested Tom and found evidence of his madness in the basement. It turned out he truly believed in his great-grandfather's experiments and was trying to continue his work using unsuspecting guests. This terrifying experience left a deep mark on Marcus and Rachel's lives. They never used Airbnb again and always carefully checked places they planned to visit. Their trip to Tennessee had turned into a real nightmare, but they were grateful to have returned home alive and unharmed. Story 3: The Secret of the Old Mansion. Amy and Josh Brown had long dreamed of a romantic getaway in a historic place. They found a charming old mansion in New England through Airbnb. The house, built in the late 19th century, was surrounded by dense forests and looked like a fairy tale location. The hosts, Linda and Harry, had many positive reviews, and the mansion seemed like the perfect spot for a peaceful retreat. Linda greeted them upon arrival, showed them around the house, and shared a bit of its history. The mansion had belonged to one family for several generations. The house was full of antiques and old photographs, giving it a special atmosphere. Linda handed them the keys and warned them that there was no mobile reception nearby, but there was a landline in the house for emergencies. Amy and Josh were delighted by the seclusion and beauty of the mansion. They walked around the property, enjoying the fresh air and silence. However, on their first night, they began to notice strange things. Amy woke up with the feeling that someone was watching her. She looked around but saw no one. Deciding it was just her imagination, she went back to sleep. The next day, they went out to explore the surroundings. Returning to the house, Josh noticed an old pantry they hadn't been told about. The door was locked, but he noted its location to come back later. In the evening, they had a candlelit dinner, enjoying the solitude. But as they started eating, the lights in the house began to flicker. They decided it was just electrical issues in the old house. Later that night, Josh woke up again to strange noises. He went into the hallway and noticed the pantry door was now open. He quietly went down and saw that inside were many old items, clothes, books, toys. Among them was an old doll with empty eyes staring directly at him. Josh took it and returned to the bedroom, deciding to show it to Amy in the morning. The next morning, they both returned to the pantry and started looking through the items. Among old diaries and photographs, they found a letter written on yellowed paper. It talked about a girl named Annabelle who disappeared many years ago under mysterious circumstances. Linda had never mentioned her, and Amy decided it was worth asking about. When Linda came to check if everything was all right, Amy showed her the letter. Linda's face turned pale, and she began to tremble. She confessed that Annabelle was her great-grandmother who disappeared in this house many years ago. The family had searched for her for a long time but never found her. Since then, strange things had been happening in the mansion, and everyone thought Annabelle's spirit was still there. Amy and Josh felt uneasy but decided to stay until the end of their vacation. They didn't believe in ghosts and thought everything could be explained logically. However, the next few nights were filled with terror. They heard whispers and footsteps at night, things moved on their own, and Annabelle's doll appeared in different places around the house, even though they were sure where they had left it. One night, Josh woke up and saw that Amy was not in bed. He began searching the house and found her standing in the pantry, holding the doll. Amy was in a trance. Repeating the same word helped Josh try to wake her, but to no avail. He called Linda and Harry, who arrived immediately. Harry suggested performing a cleansing ritual to calm Annabelle's spirit. They gathered candles and old family relics and started the ritual. During the ritual, the house began to shake, and they all heard a loud crying. Amy woke up and, seeing what was happening, started screaming. Suddenly, everything stopped, and there was silence. The next day, Linda and Harry apologized for what had happened and refunded Amy and Josh for their stay. They assured them that Annabelle's spirit was now at peace, but Amy and Josh decided not to take any chances and left for home. This experience forever changed their attitude towards old houses and historical places. They became more cautious when choosing places for vacation and always carefully checked the history of the homes they planned to rent. Their trip to New England turned into a real nightmare, but they were grateful to have returned home alive and unharmed.